Please, let's take our seats. Welcome to this afternoon's work session. First order of business is to ascertain from the board members if anyone would like to discuss any other preliminary items for the next BOC meeting. All right, hearing none, we'll go straight into our agenda. First up will be Ms. Anna Roach with ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Go back
I concur.
to the cover slide.
I didn't have to.
That's the first one.
Women are.
Good
Very
afternoon,
smart.
members of the board. How are you? Thank you so much for inviting me to
Always
be
feel
here
great.
today. Mr. Stanford as well. I just saw him. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. And thank you to the rest of the board members as well. I really am delighted to be here today. Clayton County continues to grow, it continues to thrive, and it continues to be a vital part of the broader Metro Atlanta region. Now, before I get started, I do want to take a second to acknowledge representatives for Clayton County on the ARC board. And they certainly, in my experience, make sure that the voice of Clayton County gets heard at the regional table. Now, as our longest tenured commission chair, I'm not sure if you even knew you were the longest tenured commission chair, Chairman Turner serves a vital role on the Atlanta Regional Commission Board. He actually also serves as the board member with the most committee appointments on our board. So he's committed to making sure that Clayton County is represented in many different areas on the board. Most significantly, as an example, Chairman Turner serves on our governance committee, which is a vital committee of the board, which is empowered to take action on behalf of the board if they're unable to meet quorum or in between meetings. He also serves on the Transportation Air Quality Committee, which is the committee that allows or helps us to allocate all of the transportation funding that we are responsible for administering. And he also, his newest role is chairing the senior policy group of the Urban Area Security Initiative. And again, that's among many other roles that he plays on our board. In terms of citizen representation, ARC is glad to have Clayton County's Charlton Bivens, and we also look forward to the county working with the mayors to select a mayoral representative. We have missed Clayton County's representation since Mayor Day stepped down from her post, so we're really looking forward to working with whichever Clayton County mayor gets to replace Mayor Day. Again, Clayton County is a vital partner, and we always look forward to not just the representation, but also the partnership that we have in many respects. So ARC's vision for the region is one great region. It is a vision that's part of a broader strategic framework that was adopted by the board earlier this year, and that's what we get up and do or try to accomplish every day at the Atlanta Regional Commission. And for today's discussion, I'll focus intently on transportation because as you'll see in a moment, we are conducting a 4-year update of our long-range major transportation plan. This plan holds the promise of shaping Clayton County as well as our region for decades to come. We do need your input and we do need your guidance because we don't want at the Atlanta Regional Commission for the staff and the board to be the only ones that decide what happens with Clayton County in terms of transportation investments. We really do need your input. But before I get into the plan, I want to take just a second, commissioners, to share with you how the Atlanta Regional Commission is making an impact right here in Clayton County. Now, ARC is one of 12 regional commissions across the state of Georgia. Regional commissions were established by the Georgia Planning Act to support local communities in community development planning. But over the years since we were established as a regional commission, our portfolio has expanded, and now we have additional federal, state designations and responsibilities to include serving as the Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization for the federal government. We also have responsibility for community development across the region for providing funding for aging services. We also do water resources management, workforce development, and then, as we mentioned before, urban area security, which is a Homeland Security grant from the federal government as well. And through those different areas of responsibility that we have at the commission, the investments here in Clayton County include over $100 million in federal and state transportation dollars in projects awarded across Clayton County just last year. These include bus service providing east-west connectivity. There was also funding for the start of a new transit center at the Justice Center. And also, not to mention the ramp modifications at the interchange of I-285 and 331, which is an exit I use all the time. We also provided over $800,000 in state and federal funds for Clayton County Senior Services. And for those commissioners with senior constituents, you know how important those services are to them, because it covers senior transportation, home-delivered meal, in-home services, and the like. Very important partnership between the Atlanta Regional Commission and Clayton County. I also want to brag about 5 Livable Center Initiative grants from ARC to Clayton County, which has helped us both work together to build and design livable, walkable communities across Clayton County. Now, as I mentioned before, ARC serves as the federal designated metropolitan planning organization for the Atlanta region. It's a 20-county region that's represented in the map there. And in that role, we are responsible for developing and maintaining the 30-year transportation plan for the region on behalf of the federal government. As I mentioned before, we take a fresh look at that 30-year plan every 4 years, and we are in the middle of an update year as we speak. We never try to undertake these updates alone. We do need to work with our local governments, our transportation partner agencies, as well as other stakeholders to make sure all the relevant voices are heard. We also take this process of updating this plan very, very seriously, because what's at stake is the over $173 billion worth of transportation resources that Atlanta Regional Commission deploys across the region through this plan. So this is our big update year, like I mentioned before, but the transportation planning process happens all the time at ARC. We are constantly looking at our models, we're constantly looking at our population estimates, and between the major updates, we amend our short-range plan in what you all probably commonly know as our TIP, which again, make Chairman Turner's role on the TAQC very important, because that's where those decisions are made when we annually adopt TIP amendments each year. So digging just a little bit deeper and speaking specifically about the impact of the transportation plan on Clayton County, we're working with each of you, as well as your constituents, but more specifically your transportation and public works departments, to make sure that we attack most of the bottlenecks, as it were, in transportation, right? We also want to improve safety in those investments. Expanding walkable options to reduce carbon emissions is also a huge priority of the Atlanta Regional Commission, and just the overall fostering of the development of vibrant, walkable, livable centers. A few examples of what's currently in the plan for Clayton County. ARC will provide operating funds for MARTA routes 197 and 198, and as you know, commissioners, that provides connections to Riverdale, the South Lake Mall area, Morrow, Stockbridge, and I-675. In addition, as a part of Connect Clayton, we're working on the transit hub at the Justice Center. And currently what's anticipated is providing shelters, benches, as well as real-time updating on schedules breeze machines, bike racks, and just simply room for more buses as a part of that project. In addition to transit, we are planning for pedestrian improvements like ramps and sidewalks, as well as lighting to be installed along the 11.5 corridor. That's the Clayton portion of Tara Boulevard. We talk about that project all the time, Mr. Chairman, and we're very excited to see those improvements come to fruition. And of course, your Public Works Department will let you know we are constantly coordinating on the miles and miles and miles of resurfacing projects that are planned within this long-range plan. So again, just a few examples on how we're making an impact in Clayton County. I wanted to let you know that the plan does have significant improvements in all roadways and transit corridors in Clayton County. And that's why it's so important, again, I don't want to overstate this, but that's why it's so important for us to get your input. This planning effort, this 4-year update, comes at a really significant time in our region, and there are so many things that are driving the updates that we have to include in this 4-year update. For one, our region is still growing. Clayton County is still growing. The Atlanta Regional Commission forecasts that Metro Atlanta will grow by 1.8 million people by 2050. And to put that in context, if you've ever been to Nashville, that's like taking that whole metropolitan area, not just the city, and moving all of those people to Metro Atlanta. And specifically here in Clayton County, our draft forecasts tell us that the county will add an additional 40,000 people to its population by 2050. And that's going to take your population well over 348,000 people. So again, just recognizing that we're going to continue to grow as a region and certainly as a county, we're going to have to make this update to be able to accommodate and plan for that growth. Another big driver of change is technology. Electric vehicles, the rise of teleworking and artificial intelligence. Hard to pick up a newspaper these days and not hear about ChatGPT and its impact on the way that we communicate and relate to each other. All of that technology is going to impact the way we plan for transportation, the way we plan for the work that we do and how we communicate and relate with each other. And of course, I don't have to mention sort of the elephant in the room of change that has occurred over the last 4 years, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. It has created a new normal for this region as well as for this county. And so it has blown up a lot of our predictions about what was going to happen the last time we looked at this plan. So very important for us to take a look at this again. The other thing that we have to consider as a part of this update is how climate change is impacting our region. It's funny, I took this role a year ago, and I was glad to take it at this time because we're no longer debating whether climate change is a real thing. We can see it every day in the storms that we're experiencing. We can see it in our stormwater issues that we have developed, right? So we're no longer having to debate whether that's a thing or not. It is here. And so what this update will provide is an opportunity for us to pivot in terms of how we will plan for investments to accommodate and mitigate extreme weather events like flash floods and the like. And the final thing that I want to mention in terms of what's driving the change is new federal policies. So your department heads will tell you about the host of new priorities that this federal government has in terms of whether it will allow for funding in transportation areas. If you are not focusing on EV infrastructure, on climate and resiliency, and on equity, your grant application will fall on deaf ears at the federal government. And so the way that we had previously planned for priorities in our long-range plan, that has got to change and adapt to the times that we're in right now. Okay, goes a little fast. Here we go. So what are we trying to achieve? Now from a broader perspective, now I'm not gonna read through them. I've talked about this basically lists the priority areas for this update. We're certainly going to be making sure that all of those align with ARC's overall strategic framework and the goals of promoting healthy, livable communities, and most importantly, making strategic decisions and investments in infrastructure. Fostering a competitive economy is another one that is key for us as well. So just ensuring that our goals in the plan are certainly aligned with our goals for the region. So as I mentioned earlier, we work hard to ensure that our planning process is inclusive and it reflects Clayton County's needs and Clayton County's priorities for how they want their community to grow and what they want to focus on as it does grow. And for that reason, our Metropolitan Transportation Plan inevitably will include elements of Clayton County's comprehensive plan. The federal government expects for us to do that, and that's quite frankly just the way we work. Over the next 6 months, we'll be holding focus groups as well as public meetings around the region. We want people to understand the scale of the investment that we have to make in transportation. Our website lists every single public meeting that we will have. Some of them will happen during the board meetings that Chair Turner attends, but there'll be other opportunities for us to engage with Clayton County's constituents as well. Now, in the fall is when we will release the draft Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. We do want you to keep that time frame in mind because when it does come out, we want to hear your feedback and we want to hear from you whether your priorities are reflected in that plan. And the other thing is that we've developed an online survey. There is a QR code on the screen. I think we also have copies left for constituents if they want to take that survey. It's a great way to engage without attending a community meeting or attending an ARC board meeting. So I encourage you to help me publish that survey because at the very least we want to hear the voice of each of your constituencies. So please help us spread the word about the survey so that those sentiments can be reflected in the plan. So I want to end today, again, by asking for your continued participation, your continued partnership as the board of Clayton County. There are lots of ways to get involved, the ones I mentioned before, but talk to your staff. We are working closely with folks like Jeff, who sits on our transportation coordinating committee, and we get his feedback as well. But I do want to encourage you to continue to engage with us. I am an open book. I answer my cell phone, so if you have any questions that you don't think about today, please call me. I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, for the invitation to be here today. And Mr. Chairman, I can answer any questions if you're ready.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from board members?
I do have one.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Davis.
Where are you in the development of this Metro Update Plan?
So we started the plan update in earnest in December of last year. We hope to complete the first draft of the update this fall. I think we've so far tried to target October because we want to give the community an opportunity to provide additional input before we take it to the board for adoption in November. We've built in some cushion because it's not due to the federal government till January. So if additional comment or input or changes are needed, we still have a couple of months to incorporate those changes before we file that plan update.
And how do we get those updates and comments or points of concerns and needs to you?
Fantastic. We can, certainly the survey is available. You can contact me directly by emailing me. You can contact anyone on our planning staff by visiting the ARC website, but your best representation obviously is Chairman Turner as well as the citizen member, and once we get that sorted out, our mayoral representative. So you have access to your representatives on the ARC board, certainly direct access to me, and your transportation and planning staff here also has a direct line to my staff at the Atlanta Regional Commission.
Thank you.
Thank
Let
you,
me just
Commissioner
add to
Davis.
that the ARC staff is good at sending out a lot of updates and information. You can respond directly back to them as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin.
I'd like to piggyback on Commissioner Davis's question because I'm glad that you stated who's representing, but I can tell you that there are a lot of needs within our county that are yet to be addressed that I know for sure that the ARC has the opportunity to at least assist us with those. We know you're doing a great job to help us even with the flooding in some of the other areas, like in District 2. I wish you would have gone in at a little bit of a deep dive on that. And really appreciated your presentation, but I really would have liked to see more about what's being done specifically in Clayton County. Because even though we want to think about the region, this county is what we're making sure that the information is getting back to your board. So back to the commissioner's question. So how can we as a board strategically ensure that these needs are getting to you? We don't have mayoral representation. We know that the chair is representative of it, but we need better communication to know exactly what's coming to you and what's coming back to the board. And then you even mentioned others that are serving. But if we could possibly make sure that specific information regarding Clayton County is delivered, that would be great. That there's better communication.
Yes, just email me, honestly. If you email me and I don't have the answer as the CEO, I can get you connected to our staff. But I'm available to each of you. I represent each of you as the executive for the Atlanta Regional Commission. So you just email me.
And like I said earlier, there's a lot of emails that come from staff that I know that
Sure.
all the commissioners are copied on too.
They
So,
do.
any other questions? Commissioner Anderson?
I just want to say thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Thank
I
you.
will be setting up an appointment to speak with you.
Absolutely.
And so we can just discuss District 1 and
Sure.
the county as well. So
Glad to
thank
do
you. The 5 Livable Centers Initiative Communities, what does that consist of?
So the Livable Centers initiative grants are grants that Clayton County planning staff apply to ARC for.
Okay.
So if they have a vision for a town center somewhere,
Okay.
they will apply to the county for a LCI study grant. After that study is done that determines feasibility and transportation needs for that livable center, then they're eligible to apply for implementation funds through our TIP program, our Transportation Improvement Plan program. So those LCI initiatives are really driven by county staff and the planning that they do. And if they have a need, they apply to us and then we fund the program.
Thank you.
Sure.
One more question. Don't mind. I'm glad we talked about transportation as well.
Sure.
Where are we exactly on the funding that we received with transportation on 1941 with the efforts that actually I think it was led in part by the other organization that Shannon James is on? Can we get an update maybe possibly soon on where we are with that? And if there's any information that you all need from us? to
Sure.
move
I don't
forward?
know that project specifically. It could be in Aerotropolis,
It is.
Clayton
It is.
County
Is
partnership.
Aerotropolis and you all funded, help fund, we got funding?
From ARC.
ARC.
Yep, sure.
Yes,
We
we
can
did.
get you an update on that.
And thank you for that funding, by the
Very
way.
welcome. Oh, absolutely.
Well,
So
thank
we're
you
here
again
for.
for your presentation and
Yes,
for your
Mr.
leadership that you're providing at the ARC.
Absolutely.
And your staff. The staff's doing a great job. And one thing I can attest to rather is that you do answer your phone when we call
I
it.
do answer.
So we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You have a great day. Be blessed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
All right, I think there was a request to move, to adjust the agenda and bring animal control update up at this time.
It's on the agenda at 2.
Oh, I must didn't get the latest update. Okay, I got the old, that's the first revision.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chair, and Board of Commissioners. Thank you so much for affording me and my team the opportunity to address this issue. It's been a hot topic for several weeks at this podium and via email and different meetings, and I'm glad we have the opportunity to clear up some concerns that have been expressed. My great team is here with me. You will hear from our veterinarian, Dr. Chasteen, following me, and then following her, you will hear from the Animal Control Unit Commander, Captain Jody Turnipseed. I think the best place to start is purpose. And according to Ordinance 14, the purpose of our Animal Control Unit is to alleviate potential health hazards as they relate to the keeping of animals and to provide a more healthy atmosphere for citizens of the county. Of course, animal control is under the police department umbrella, and with that, our shelter is the facility operated by government for the purpose of impounding or caring for animals held under the authority of this chapter or state law. Facilities, we have 2. One is situated behind police headquarters, that's the Jonesboro location. What's key here is the capacity of these 2 facilities. The one in Jonesboro has a dog capacity of 71, and the one in Ellenwood a capacity of 59. So that's a total of 130 as far as dogs are concerned. When we talk about staffing, please bear witness to the chart that shows that our supervisors, we're only showing 1 vacancy. Our vet staff is full with 3. What's key here is the animal control officers that serve unincorporated Clayton County. We're operating at less than 50% in this capacity. As our population has increased steadily over the few years, and you'll see later in this presentation, the population of our animals have steadily increased. Thus, we're not meeting the need of this community, which exacerbates many of the comments that you hear at this podium and that I receive on a regular in the email and in community meetings. I will reflect back to my previous presentation about public safety incentives and raises. This one is key. I've lost at least 1 animal control officer who sat in front of me and said she could not raise her family on her wage, so she left. And lastly, from my perspective, we are full. This morning, I stopped by Animal Control Headquarters. We're full. If you're not paying attention, we had a hoarding case that caused us to bring in numerous animals that fill our spaces. And when I say full, it doesn't mean that every run you see at an animal control facility is occupied, because the doctor and the commander have to have vacant runs to move animals around, to feed and treat and prepare for the surgeries that the doctor will likely speak to in this presentation. So with that, I yield the floor to our veterinarian, Dr. Chasteen, at this time.
Evening. Thank y'all very much for allowing us to be here tonight.
If you could you put a mic down a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just a little shorter.
Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just to give you a little background on me, again, thank y'all very much for the opportunity to come and speak to y'all tonight, because from what I understand, y'all have been bombarded as well as us. So this will give us the opportunity to give you the other side of the story. Since we do serve the county, that is very important that we give you the answers that y'all are seeking. As a veterinarian, I've been a licensed veterinarian for 16 years. I have actually been in the veterinary profession for 23 years. I'm dating myself. But I am also originally a resident of Clayton County. I actually grew up on Jones Road and graduated from Morris Senior High in 1985. There, I said it out loud. So I have roots in this county, and so it's definitely grown and changed since I was here. One of the things that I do see is the number of animals that come through. And as a veterinarian, my main interest is animal suffering and public health. And so as we take these animals in and we care for them, the biggest thing that we have to think about is where they're at needs to be better than where they came from. And where they're going after that needs to be better than where they're at with us. And so that's what we strive to do. It is difficult when you see that we have 130 runs to be able to hold animals. And when you're bringing in 9 dogs a day, and like in the past, we've had 20 dogs a week going out with the urgent list. Thank you very much, rescue groups, because that helps tremendously. But even then, if you figure you're getting in 50 dogs a week and 20 are going out, it's easy to see the math. We have an overpopulation. Much like your drawer with your socks or your underwear or any other clothes, if you stuff it full, you're not going to be able to get it open. You're not going to be able to see all of the clothing that you have in there. Things may get ripped, they may get overlooked. So it's much better if that drawer has working room and that you only put maybe 2/3 full. This is much how we need to operate. Capacity for care is what they call it in the shelter world. And that, everybody thinks, well, you're full, you're full. You're not full because they walk through and they see empty runs. Well, the problem is you have to be able to care for each of those animals. We have to be able to have the ability to clean, feed, spay or neuter, medicate, all of this on a daily basis. And the shelter world looks at it as 15 minutes per animal. Well, if you've got 150 dogs and 20-something cats, and you see we have a deficit of employees, it makes it very difficult to get everything done in a timely manner and in a way that benefits the animals so that they are better than where they came from. And so this is our ultimate goal. We want to do the best that we can. My vet staff team and I want to do the best that we can for the individual animal. But we also have to look at it as a whole population. If I spend all my time on this one individual animal, what happens to the other 149 that I have to care for that day? So we have to spread it out, and we have to think about the whole population. We also have to think about the liability of some of these animals. The longer they stay here, the longer it costs in terms of medicating, because they hit about that 2 or 3 week mark, and they're going to start getting sick. It's like sending kids to daycare. They're going to get exposed to stuff. They're going to get sick. And so we have to think about that. We do vaccinate on intake. I'm not sure where I'm at in all this, but we'll get back to that in a minute. We do vaccinate on intake. They get a distemper parvo vaccination. They also get Bordetella. Unfortunately, as I'm sure y'all have heard, we have kennel cough, which is Bordetella. I've done repeated tests. It is not things that we can vaccinate against. The things that we vaccinate for, they're not getting those. There's mycoplasma. Unfortunately, it is endemic in our facilities. We're not going to get rid of it. And so in about 2 or 3 weeks, these dogs start getting snotty noses, they start coughing, they have kennel cough. So we start them on doxycycline. Now you're having to have people medicate them every day, check on them every day. Some of them get worse, some of them go into pneumonia. We have to look at this in light of how many animals do we have to look at. And so that does lead to, I'm sorry, I'm getting dry mouth. This does lead to what do we do with the extra animals? What do we do with the sick animals? And unfortunately, this can be, oh, bless you. Thank you. Pardon me. At least I'm not coughing yet. I have asthma. So what that does is that leads to decisions that have to be made. The animals that have been there the longest, the ones that show possible behavioral issues, yes, a lot of times it is because of where they are at. I know that. Everybody knows that. The problem is in the facility where we're at, with the animals, with the stress, with the noise, we have to make hard decisions. And when it comes to space and time, then those animals that have had medical issues, even if it's something that would be easily treatable out of the facility, if they have any kind of behavioral issues, unfortunately, regardless of age or how cute they are, sometimes those are the ones that have to be chosen. We do try to get as many out through rescue as possible. They are just as full as us. They have the opportunity to say, we can't take any more. We don't have that. This county has an overpopulation of dogs and cats, mostly dogs. And so we do have to make that decision. Medical ones that come in the door that are catastrophic, those are easy because I'm ending animal suffering. We always make sure that there is no known owner. If we even think there's an owner, we track it down to the best of our ability, stabilize the animal, and try to get them out that way so that the owner can get back in touch with their animal and go from there. If there's no known owner, then unfortunately, we do have to make that hard call. But that one's easier than the ones that we've gotten to know over 2 or 3 weeks. When we do make that decision, and it is a joint decision between everybody that's involved, the staff lets us know, this one has not done real well with us taking it out to walk. It doesn't really like to come out. It gets snippy if we do, that kind of stuff. We do have some that say no, and when they say no, they mean no. And so you can't push that. And I know that a lot of them, they say no to me, because it's that white coat syndrome. No, I don't wear a white coat, but the dogs know, the cats know. And so I don't take it personal. So I have other people work with the animals. Captain Turnipseed has quite an extensive background working with dogs of different breeds and stuff, and so I value her opinion. I have had behavior classes. I have also done, I've worked with dogs all my life, done Schutzen and different kinds of things. So I've had interaction with the different dogs. And we decide, okay, this one is probably going to be a liability if they leave the county. Yes, the rescue groups can sign waivers stating they're not, but if somewhere down the road that dog bites somebody and they said, well, you got it from Clayton County, well, then they can sue Clayton County as a civil matter outside of the rescue groups. So we have to think ahead for some of these things.
Repeat that again.
So if a
And in
dog,
fact, you know what? I apologize. I'm not
No,
going to
you're
ask you to
fine.
repeat it. We're going to let us handle that part because we do have a little bit of immunity. Go on.
Please
no, you're fine, you're fine.
Sorry
no,
for the
y'all-
interruption. Please,
not
sorry.
y'all, but
Please
I'm
continue.
sorry.
right, no, you're fine, you're fine. The biggest thing is, let's say we've got a dog that has acted snippy or has tried to bite the staff
Got it.
members. And rescue is like, oh, but they're cute. We want it. And we're like, no, we can't. And there's precedent for this. You know, we're not just saying this. And it pains us, but we do have to think about the liability if this animal gets out of here. Yes, this is a very stressful situation, but what if it gets put in a stressful situation down the road where it bites a kid in the face? And even though the rescue group has taken time to sign the waiver saying, oh, we won't sue you, but what if they think the dog is rehabilitated, doesn't ever have the triggers, but then has a trigger later on and bites a kid in the face? Then they can say, well, y'all got that dog from Clayton County. We don't want that to happen. We just don't want that to happen. So what we do when we make that decision, we have the scheduled euthanasia and we have the emergency. Again, the emergency is the medical ones. But we try to do it at quiet times during the day. I prefer to do it in the animal's run so that we're not taking it out to a new area because these dogs get very used to where they're at. So do the cats. I sedate them first by an intramuscular injection in the hind leg, just as if they were going to go to surgery. They're completely asleep. They don't know what's going on. We inject them, we take the leash off, step back out, let them go to sleep. Usually we're just around the corner so that we can keep an eye on them. But we let them go to sleep so that they're not being bothered. And then I go back in and give the euthanasia solution. Everything is done by American Veterinary Medical Association standards of humane euthanasia. It also follows DEA regulations that I have to follow and Department of Ag regulations that I have to follow. The controlled substances are kept out of contact of anybody else. I'm the only one that does this. So as you can see, our numbers, they're actually pretty stable. We looked really quick, I think it was yesterday morning, just to see where we were at for half of the year, for 6 months into 2023, and our numbers are about the same. The biggest thing that I'd like you to see is 2020 was COVID year, so our intake was down. Before that, it was up in the 3,000 and 4,000s. And so we did have a reduction because everybody was home, their pets were home. Unfortunately, now what we've seen is it's going back up. It's going back up very fast now that it's warming up, and we're having a lot more bites because these dogs that were kept at home are now hitting that puberty stage at about 2 years, and they're coming out, and they're frisky, and they're being bad dogs. So we're getting a lot of bites, and that's one of the things I'd like to prevent. I'll let you go ahead.
You want to talk about the rate compared to the national average?
Yeah, if you take a look, the biggest thing that you see is we're less than half of what, we're about a quarter of what the national average is for euthanasias. It didn't used to be that way. When I think it was in, I want to say 2014, 60% of the animals that came through Clayton County's animal control were euthanized. 60%. We're at right around 4%. So that's a huge, huge thing.
It's on the captain.
Sit on the captain now.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good to see you.
All right. So the origin of the urgent list. The origin of the urgent list basically was established at the request of animal advocates. And the purpose was to assist with networking of Clayton County animals to get them to rescue groups and things of that nature. And what they do is we have a wonderful group of individuals that actually network, and they actually raise $400 per dog in funds. And you figure that out times 20 dogs a week, it's $8,000 times 52 weeks a year. That's actually a lot of funds that they're having to network and raise. And what the purpose of that was for was to make it more attractive to rescue groups. Rescue groups have to raise their own funds for the vetting and boarding and things of that nature of the animals. So this makes it more appealing to a rescue group to, in turn, pull an animal from Clayton County. An animal that would normally not be pulled, especially unfortunately we have like a 95% pit bull rate in the county. And they are not an attractable animal, especially at an older age. They're more difficult to move into place. So basically, at the request of the animal activist groups, that's where it originated from. And what that list comprised of, it ultimately comprised of the longest 20 staying animals or housed animals at the facility. So if we had a dog that was there for 3 or 4 months, those dogs would be the ones that are moved on that list, or an emergency medical, like we needed to bump one of the ones that were longer staying for a medical issue. Those were the animals that were put on the urgent list so they could assist with the raising of the funds. So with that, we had a great partnership, but with that also created problems. Obviously, with our staffing issues and things of that nature, we were being bombarded with emails. I had staff that were getting numerous calls where they were actually being cussed out on the phone over the euthanasia or the kill list, as what the rescue or advocates branded the urgent list as. Back during the COVID times, there wasn't any euthanasia based off of the urgent list because our numbers were so low. We literally had animals that would be on the urgent list for 3 and 4 weeks before they were pulled. But our numbers literally were 60 and 7 animals between the 2 facilities. So our numbers were down, so we didn't have to worry about that. People were actually adopting, and animals were moving out of the facilities because people wanted, during the COVID, they had to shelter in place. They wanted the animals at home to comfort them and have something to occupy. Well, unfortunately, now we're having the reverse of that, where people are actually never networked or socialized the animals and are now having to go back into the workforce and basically just abandoning the animals. I can't tell you how many calls on a daily basis that we get where I need to surrender my dog because I can't take care of it anymore. And I'm actually having to turn citizens away because I don't have kennel space. And with the bombardment of the emails, the phone calls, literally we would have staff members get calls, and I want this particular dog. Okay, well, this particular dog has already had an adopter, or it's already had a rescue hold placed on it. Can we interest you in one of the other animals that we've got to continue moving an animal? Nope, all I want to do is save the dog that's going to be killed. We can't redirect them to assist in moving. We've got rescue groups that point blank said that they wouldn't work with individuals. We've had rescue groups that have said, okay, I won't pull an animal unless it's got funds on it. So where the urgent list created a great thing, at the same time it also created a bad thing, where our staff was continually harassed to the point that we couldn't even answer calls for service to our citizens. And I know y'all get the emails where animal control's not answering the phone. I can't tell y'all how many emails that I get where citizens are emailing me saying I can't get through to animal control. It's because our staff members are having to deal with not only the calls coming into the facility, they're having to address the people that are coming in and working with them at the counter. They're having to assist and going and pulling animals. So it pulls, when my staffing is so low right now, it's pulling and taking away from other areas that they shouldn't have to be pulled from. Not only that, but we also had to intake our own dispatch for calls for service. Mm-hmm. So where now I have my secretaries and my supervisory staff dispatching our calls for service to accommodate the call volume. And those are the issues that we're dealing with. So I actually changed the approach to the urgent list. And what my goal was is to actually focus on all of the animals in the facilities and not just a list of 20. So basically at intake, we're actually pushing out on social media videos of all of the animals that are impounded into Clayton County instead of just a list of 20. So that way it'll increase our potential to reach, one, the owner, because they may not recognize a horrible picture that we take because this dog is scared to death and you can't get a good picture of it, where they might recognize the video that's posted, where it makes it more appealing to someone that's wanting to adopt. And it also makes, that's one of the requests that we constantly get for rescue groups is, hey, we need a video of this dog. So my focus changed from just a list of solely 20 animals to focusing on all of the animals in the facilities that we're having to work with. Not only that, all of our animals are posted on 24 Pet Connect. So we have a database that's Chameleon database is where we input all of our animals into. That database is directly linked to 24 Pet Connect. So that automatically posts a picture. This website is updated every 15 minutes. So throughout the day, as our animal control officers bring in animals, they're constantly being uploaded and immediately placed onto this website. And so that makes them more adoptable and hopefully more available.
Thank you, Captain. Before we get to questions, Commissioner, I think it would be prudent for you to know what we've done and what we've been doing over the years. As I became chief, we were able to create a kennel tech position that this board approved that allowed us to better maintain the cleanliness of our facility. We added the rescue coordinator, and I've asked for another in this upcoming budget. This team has identified the rescue coordinator's email as the point of communication. So I know there's a lot of debate about this urgent list, but if the mission is truly about knowing what animals are slated to be removed from the facility, there's a way to get the information. Not to mention this 24 Pet Connect platform. The chief is not proficient in computers, but I was able to go to 24 Pet Connect and you can see the dates the animals entered the facility, not only our jurisdiction, but I believe Henry County, Fayette, and some others. So there are avenues of communication for anyone who wants to know how long the dogs have been in our facility to find out. And as listed in this presentation, the 21 days is actually an increase. Years ago, the days were 10 before there was any conversation about removal of the animal. What I'm saying is these great people and this great team has taken great steps to try to meet the needs of the community while balancing their responsibilities in this animal control space. And lastly, I still intend, as budgets in the future come along, to try to fill a personnel gap that was created when we stood up the adoption facility. It's my understanding that we did not request the positions to go along with the facility. So now we're playing catch up, and we're asking our personnel to manage 2 facilities with the personnel allotted for 1. So it's my mission going forward to fix that. And with that, I'll stop talking. Doc, we on the time. Come on.
Doc been over there with them dogs all day. Glad to see you.
take
Oh,
the-
now I gotta talk to
Take the
people.
mic.
I gotta talk to people. So one of the things that we do communicate behind the scenes a lot. One of the things that we would like to do, we do listen to the advocates. Yes, we would like to lower our euthanasia rates even more. One of the things that it's going to have to be done, obviously, is a mandatory spay and neuter. It is something that we are working forward to being able to develop, and I've started working on some. I know that some of the advocates have definitely started working on some, and we're going to try to see about putting things together. Ms. Mitchell has definitely been very helpful with that. But it's going to be a long-term process, because the very first thing we're going to have to do is educate our citizenry. Because right now, you think about it, we can't even get them to keep the animals, and it's a Georgia statewide leash law. We can't even get there to keep their animals contained, and with an annual rabies vaccine, which is also state mandated. And so this is going to be a piecewise thing, but we are working on it. So just wanted to add that.
Well, thank you, Chief and staff, for your presentation. Are there any questions from board members?
Yes, I have a question.
Commissioner Anderson.
I have some questions. I want to ask you, what's the average monthly euthanasia rate within the facilities?
Average
between
monthly
or yearly?
All right, so I didn't break it down by the month.
Okay,
It's broke down by year.
year, okay.
It runs anywhere from 100 to 150 a year, I
s-
think.
So basically, euthanasia is broke down into two categories.
Talking to the microphone.
I'm sorry. So euthanasia is broke down into two categories. It's broken down into in-shelter euthanasia and just euthanasia in general. So in-shelter euthanasias are going to be sick dogs that wound up getting sick in the facilities, aggressive dogs, bite dogs, anything that is euthanized for medical or time and space while it occurred in the facilities. If a euthanasia occurs immediately, or it has a medical condition that we're waiting for an owner to reclaim and the owner ultimately doesn't and we have to euthanize, that is not tallied against the in-shelter euthanasia.
Okay.
That's considered a euthanasia that occurred on the road.
A lot of those I don't do, they're done externally.
Okay.
All right, so euthanasia in 2020, we euthanized 125 animals in shelter.
Okay.
21 was 70. 22 was actually changed. So 2022, I found out that I was actually reporting the euthanasia rate incorrectly to the Department of Ag, where they want total number of euthanasia. So the total number of euthanasia in 2022 was 384, where I was doing total numbers. And with that, the chief already showed the actual in-shelter euthanasia percentages against the national average.
And it was 126 was the actual in-shelter euthanasia.
Yeah.
And I just wanted the public to hear those numbers, because also, some of the concerns that I've been hearing just from from our animal advocates, they were saying basically that when our people are going within the neighborhoods, they're not knocking on the 5 doors and making sure they find out who that dog belongs to. Have we been addressing that, or just kind of talking to our people as they go out to make sure that they're doing that?
So that is twofold.
Okay.
Yes, we have. It has actually been a roll call item for probably the past two months.
Okay.
And part of the issue with that is why that number has dropped down as far as what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm operating literally with 2 ACOs for the entire county
Thank you.
on the road at a time.
All right.
So that does take away from what we can do proactively to identify an actual owner when I have 2 ACOs responding to all calls for service on a daily basis.
Thank you. And one more thing, they were talking about ongoing adoption events. I know I love the 24 Pet Connect, but they were saying just, how can we do more ongoing adoption events in person, more or less. And I know, and that's what I wanted you to address for the public to hear what's going on and why we're not doing as many.
So the adoption events were shut down due to COVID.
Okay,
And then it continued with staffing issues.
okay,
I actually have a adoption event scheduled for August the 5th. I have not actually gotten everything together to push that out to the public. And actually, Dr. Chastain and I also want to, once the budget opens back up, we had actually planned last September to do a rabies and vaccination clinic with mandatory microchipping. And that was basically going to start to be the implementation of helping us with a mandatory registration within the county. But unfortunately, we did wind up with 2 hoarding cases back to back last year that kind of threw us off of that plan.
and Mr. Chairman, they got one more sensitive issue that they brought to my attention was they said that when people are coming in to look for their pets, and they're not allowed to, I guess, go to the back to kind of look for it. And I know you talked about, your staff having to be here and there. And can you just address, because they just feel like they should be able to go back, or if that pet is lost, identify that pet.
So initially, it all started with COVID, obviously, with our
Yes, ma'am.
with COVID, social distancing and things of that nature. It wound up continuing, obviously, into my not having staff to do those things, as well as working with inmate population within the facilities. But what we do is we actually print out a inventory that has a picture of absolutely every single animal between both facilities
Okay.
that sits on the counter at both facilities. We also post pictures of the animals that are in our facilities at headquarters. They're posted on the window, so you can see as you walk up. And at Anvil Block, you have room 108, which is the viewing room. 108 and 107 is the one that you can walk around. And then the animals that aren't in there, we try and keep up with the intake pictures on the wall beside the office. So you can actually see, in addition to, it's a little bit larger picture than what is on the inventory sheet, because the inventory sheet's probably a 2x2 inch picture of the animal, where they actually get to see a kennel card with the animals there. So it's a larger picture, and they're able to see. And if they, at that point, want to see one of the animals, then we have staff that will actually bring the animal out and meet with them.
Thank you so much for clarifying those concerns. And also, thank you, Chief Roberts, for meeting with some of the advocates within the community and having that meeting with them so we can clear up some misconceptions and, and continue to work together. So thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Commissioner Franklin.
First, thank you for the presentation. Jody, good to see you again.
Good seeing you,
Now I
ma'am.
see why I hadn't seen you in a while. We used to go to those adoption events quite often. But what can we do about our fees regarding those that are reclaiming their pets? Is there something that maybe you all can suggest so that they're a little bit less for those reclaiming them?
All right, so one, I request that they not be adjusted.
Okay.
Because that is taxpayer base.
Okay.
And there's actually a lot of medical that get performed on the animals in our care while they're there. I don't think that the fees that we have are unreasonable. I do have the ability, granted by you, to waive up to $100
Okay.
in reference to reclaim fees and things of that nature, and I do take that case by case.
Good.
But when we have situations, and I know that what you're talking about is a specific incident.
No, not really.
Okay.
Don't go there.
No, I won't go into it if it's not a specific incident. So,
No, but I just want to make sure that, and I understand, we don't want to not reclaim the fees that we've spent if they do require any type of medical care. But if there is a dog during the summer that has gotten away and the owner is picking it up, you've already answered that question, that you look at it by case by case basis, which is really good. The other quick question that I do have for you as well is also dealing with the rescue coordinator. So you feel that 2 is where we need to be or where we should have been when we built 2 facilities?
should have been when we had 2 facilities.
That's key, because that's one of the things that I keep harping on operations. As a board, if we're approving centers, then obviously we need to make sure that we add in the means to be able to run those facilities. So that's an oversight on our board, on our behalf. So hopefully we can go ahead and get that fixed as well. I think that's about it for me. Thank you for the clarity. Thank you for providing this information. July 22nd, we are having a family fun day over at Jim Huey, and we'd like to see if we can get you to bring some of the healthier dogs that can be rescued out.
Probably bring our personals.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, and we are going to address the additional rescue coordinator in this budget. But let me ask you a question. Once before, we used to do free neuter and spading.
No, we have to pay for that.
No,
No.
sir.
Never been
For the
free.
community, we've had, was it a voucher? But
No,
we
we
had
still-
set up in the parking lot out there at Animal Control.
That was not free.
Yeah, we
That
still
was not
pay.
free, because I actually utilized
Me
that to
too.
adopt, to fix 2 of mine, and I had to pay.
Yes.
Okay, so
It was
so
a fee, and it
Yes.
was set up by Atlanta Humane.
was it reduced fee though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I
it-
know it's something.
But I
involved.
still don't think the fee was less than what our adoption fee is. I still think I paid $125 when I did it. I did 2 of my dogs, and that was originated with Atlanta Humane. I have actually reached out to Atlanta Humane numerous times in reference to that, and they no longer have that trailer. They are in the process of getting a new trailer to where they can do that and get that mobilized again. So I do plan on doing that for the community once they are up and running with that.
There's no doubt we need to have more of that type practice to reduce the dog and cat population. But let me also say that I thank God for the rescue groups because they are doing a tremendous job and have been doing so for years and years.
Yes, sir.
So we got to continue to work with them and try our best to, there's some things that you can't do because the Department of Agriculture is going to regulate that, as well as DEA and other folks. But as we move forward, let's make sure that we do all that we can do and you have been, to make sure that we coordinate with them in their efforts. Are there any other questions? Commissioner
I do have a
Davis?
comment. Yes, Dr. Chester and Captain Turner said, I just want to say thank you for what you do. You have a very hard, non-rewarding job to do. And I hear all the complaints, but I just want to personally say thank you for what you do.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
One more real quick thing, Mr. Chair.
Franklin.
Are we using driver's license to make sure that people that are bringing dogs are from Clayton? Because as I'm going through these records, including some of these organizations that are serving that we're paying, we serve more people outside the county than in the county. And that's our issue here too.
All right, so metro counties, Fayette and Henry, I know will not take an animal in if you do not have a license in their jurisdiction. When I was at Animal Control as a lieutenant, that was our standing order as well. But at the same time, I also saw the larger picture when I came back in as a captain, and I did change that because if I'm, like my dad lives in Tennessee. So if my dad's coming in Tennessee and he sees a dog at Terra Boulevard and 138 and picks it up and Googles the closest shelter and brings them to our facility, literally back in the day, we were telling them, I'm sorry, you got to take it home or you've got to release it. And that's not fair.
I've taken plenty home and rehoused.
I understand that, but at the same time, to serve the community,
Right.
all they're going to do is turn around and walk away and let the dog loose, and then it's going to either cause a wreck or get injured or ultimately bite somebody or wind up in our facility anyway.
Got it.
What we are having a problem with, and I know this for a fact, we are getting an influx from Fulton and DeKalb County, where people are being actually told. I had 3 come in 2 Saturdays back to back from both Fulton and DeKalb County on Saturday saying that Lifeline is full and they can't take them, so we were told to bring them to Clayton County.
Let's have an offline brainstorm session because we can't keep doing that either way it goes.
well-
It costs a lot.
Yeah, and what happens is ultimately they wind up dumping the animal
Right.
because we turn them away and send them
They
to the
just
correct
dump them right
jurisdiction,
there.
Right.
and ultimately the dog winds up getting dumped and we get the dog anyway.
Let's talk about it though.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you, Chief of Staff, for the presentation and for all that you're doing. At the end of the day, we definitely just need to get more responsible pet owners. So thank you so much. Next up is legislative update, Peachtree Government Relations.
We're kicking off. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you guys for having us here. I know we've been working to get onto your calendars and getting a chance to recap the 2023 legislative session. I know we've got a presentation here. I think we may have shared a little bit of this before. Well, first, let me just say, my name is Howard Franklin. I think you have seen us and probably know the entire team here, but I'll let them introduce themselves really briefly.
Jennifer LaRosa with Ohio River South.
Tyler Lewis, Peachtree Government Relations.
Don Boley of Peachtree Government Relations.
I think we shared a little bit before the start of the 2023 session about just how special this session was, how much turnover we saw in the General Assembly, how much new legislative priorities from new constitutional officers and new members of the General Assembly were going to come into play. And so, you guys have heard from us, as has the Clayton County delegation throughout the actual General Assembly, but we just wanted to come here and present what we saw and what we worked on through this legislative session, and also answer any questions and start to turn our minds and our heads toward the 2024 session. I don't think we've got Don for the entirety of this presentation. I may be wrong about that, so you might want to start us off.
Yeah. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present, and I think I had a chance to spend some time with some of y'all at ACCG, which was great. And feel free to contact any member of this team. We're all here available to y'all if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have that discussion with you, whether it's one-on-one or in a group. So just thank you again for the opportunity. I don't know if we want to start the presentation, but for the purpose of this presentation, sorry, this is going a little quick. What we thought we'd do is talk a little bit about what happened during the 2023 session. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the bills that we looked at in particular, and then some of the, as Howard mentioned, some of the things we can expect coming forward to the 2024 session. So I'll turn it over to, I forget who's doing the slide. Tyler, okay.
So over the course of a few years, just as background, the state's seen a huge surplus in its budget. You've seen the legislature and the governor pass a series of tax cuts along with raises for teachers and other folks within the school systems. This year was a little bit unprecedented. Literally minutes before the legislature gavelled out on sine die, the last legislative day of session, they passed the budget. And in the final version, over 20 pages of allocations were removed. This was a surprise to many legislators. As you can imagine, a lot of projects were in those pages. And then after session, the governor's office of planning and budget director announced that there would be over $200 million worth of items removed in disregards. So, these were projects all across the state. And, if you were to look at the amount of legislators, there's about $1 million per legislator that was removed from the budget. But this is probably due to an economic downturn and the governor and the state preparing for that.
So there was a study committee on homelessness, which I know is a kind of an issue that especially the Atlanta-centric region is concerned with. And this study committee did result in a bill that was passed. This bill basically does not allow any hospital or local jurisdiction to take any homeless person to another jurisdiction without proof of residency or that they belonged into that county or city prior to. And they also have some audit requirements in that bill as well. So I know this was a concern. We've actually had some conversations with some of you on this. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of a decrease in that particular issue. So this was a study committee as well that resulted in quite a large bill with an overhaul of the infrastructure of the EV across the state. So the more interesting pieces are going to be on this slide here, which is that we changed the way that we charge for the EV. It's not going to be as long as the car is plugged in, but by the kilowatt hour. And then the price for the kilowatt hour as well, because apparently Georgia was one of the highest in the nation for that. So we decreased that, which would make it a little bit more user-friendly for our EV users.
Two of the more contentious bills that came up this session were House Bill 514 and House Bill 517. Both these bills ended up failing for this session, but they are still active for next year. We do want to recognize the folks at ACCG and GMA and building strong coalitions, strong bipartisan coalitions, and kind of helping stop these bills and ensuring that The local jurisdictions have powers over their own communities. House Bill 514 was really over moratoriums, zoning, permitting fees, and House Bill 517, which y'all might have recognized from a few sessions ago, was really about design standards.
Oh, yes. So this was also affectionately called the low bid bill, which would have taken the low requirement for non-compete, not taking something out to an RFP, would increase that amount from 100 to 250,000. There was some other things attached to this bill as well. Ultimately, the governor, it did make it to the governor's desk, and the governor vetoed it for a reason that he just didn't feel that we needed to lessen the competition when it came to local and municipal RFP processes. This was a very big concern across the state, and the truck weights was increased a tiny bit over what it currently is, but with that also came some increases in the fees if you do have excessive weight, and it does have a repeal date. So we will see another assessment of that around 2025, and that I expect both ACCG, GMA, GDOT to come back in full force with some strong talking points then as well, and some results of what we see from the effects of this. Sorry for the constant changes. We focus on different issue sets to make sure we know these details really, really well for you guys. So these are a couple of the county taxes and fee legislations that we kind of focused on that may affect you guys. I'll highlight just a few. So the accommodation, excise taxes for rooms and accommodations, that stalled until next year, but it was a lot about the hotel motel fee, which we also see really never gets a chance to change. I think that GDOT's holding that one pretty tight and close. Some that you also might be interested in is the update of the population bracket census. The populations were increased for the more modern times. I'll let Howard do a few on this one.
Yeah, sure. House Bill 431 is another SPLOST legislation, really clarifying what was allowable in these SPLOST lists. I know there's really what we come before you and talk about just about every year are some of the top priorities of the county. I mean, we've talked about transportation and infrastructure. We've talked about homelessness and housing, and there are obviously some themes here that continue to rise to the fore. I think we were here talking about build to rent just about a year ago, and I think in a different vehicle and with a different subject matter, we were just talking just a few seconds ago, Tyler, about preserving local control for local jurisdictions so that we don't have some of the issues that we've seen around housing really percolating all across the county. So a lot of what we see, especially in the first year and especially with a large number of freshman lawmakers, I think right around 60, is a brand new set of priorities, a lot of pieces of legislation that may not have been considered or conceived the way that we would prefer that they were, but we really just want to give you a snapshot of the thousands of bills that come before the General Assembly, and also really just the ones that we see as highest priorities for Clayton County as you're thinking about economic development, infrastructure, investment, et cetera. So we won't bore you with these. As Don mentioned earlier, we certainly want to be at the ready, and if some of these, pique your interest, and we should be talking more specifically about how they could impact both the state and the county, and where your interests intersect. We want to talk about those as soon as possible. I think Tyler alluded to this point, but we are in the first year of the biennial, so any legislation that was put forward that didn't pass still returns to its committee of jurisdiction. So we're going to be watching not only the study committee process, which we'll get to in just a second. Sorry, go ahead.
I did want to point out the last one too. That particular one, you guys may have a lot of interest in with the tourism and conventions that come because you're so close to the airport and the city as well. That particular item does allow you to change your tourism group, your nonprofit, which I think is the Clayton County Convention and Visitors Bureau, if I'm not mistaken. If you guys can't make that decision, it goes to the State Hotel Motel Review Tourism Board or Tax Review Board, and they will help you through that process. So gives you some leverage there.
I think this is actually for you, but just wanted to underscore, this is also another priority that has come before us quite a few times. We, after passage of Senate Bill 202 just 2 years ago, I know a number of folks on this board and in this staff here in Clayton County expressed interest and wanted to make sure that we had a real handle on how citizens had access to the ballot box, et cetera. So just wanted to underscore a number of these are priorities that continue to come back, but when you get a number of new lawmakers, you're going to expect to see some of the same issues recycled with the General Assembly. Tyler, I'll let you. I believe this one was for you, but I'm not sure who was jumping in.
And I'll be very brief with this. There was two major pieces of legislation passed on elections that'll affect your county board of elections and your election director. The first one, Senate Bill 129, really just allowed businesses to give any 2-hour window for folks to go and vote. So before then, it was just on election day itself. So now businesses can give off 2 hours during the early voting period. This bill also had some cleanup language for SB 202 from the 2021 General Assembly session. And then Senate Bill 222 was the more contentious bill in the election space. This one prohibited election directors and counties from accepting outside dollars and created a whole new vehicle through the state elections board, which all money would have to go through.
I don't think this one's ours. Not sure. So I'm just looking at this, but again, we try our best to take from what you guys produced for us at the beginning of the General Assembly and focus on your legislative agenda. So of course, there's going to be a lot of incoming, a lot of defense played. I think these were a couple pieces of legislation that I think spoke to some of the issues you all put forward in your legislative agenda, which was approved by the Board of Commissioners before we even got into the General Assembly. And as you all know, lawmakers in the General Assembly can put forward whatever they see fit. So a number of these bills, I think, in some form or fashion, actually connected to some of the priorities that came forward in our last legislative agenda setting. ACCG priority bills you guys heard already, and it sounds like Don mentioned seeing a number of you guys down in Savannah for the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. Obviously, we do a ton of partnership with ACCG and really see them as a real resource, both for really important information that helps inform lawmakers as they're making decisions, but also for their legislative and political heft as we're pushing back on bills that we deem as unnecessary or onerous to counties, or positive for legislation that we are supportive of. So a couple of these we've already mentioned, like truck weights and House Bill 517, but just wanted to highlight that these came with the priority from ACCG. And then finally, study committees, which are just due, I think, to kick into full swing. In fact, tomorrow we've got one big one that is focused on looking at all of the states' economic development incentives, which is one that's been widely talked about, could have wide-reaching impacts to the entire state. And obviously for a county that is very intently focused on economic development and attracting inward development, is one that we are watching very closely. We're going to have folks there for tomorrow's study committee, but there are quite a few other ones here. Lost is one that we worked on very closely, Senate Resolution 214. The entire state went through the loss process last year, and so counties and cities negotiated to come to hopefully a fair disbursements of those lost fees. It happens every 10 years after the census actually takes place, and after we get a better sense of where populations have shifted. Cities and counties in a very compacted period of time go into the behind closed doors and try to negotiate how they divvy up those dollars and how they actually deliver services to their constituents both across the city and the county. So because of all the attention that was paid, Fulton County and Chatham County and elsewhere across the state, we are going to have a study committee to try to figure out how to make this a less onerous process and one that gives more confidence that those dollars will reach the most logical locations or places for them to be spent ultimately. I know there are a couple other ones here that you guys might want to speak to, but we're going to be working really hard to make sure the study committees reflect your will. And one of the things that we're really intent on doing, to the extent you guys are interested, is pulling in your expertise. Obviously, you guys already represent one of the most dynamic counties in the state, and we want to make sure that we are able to reflect your professional and your personal experiences in so much as we're talking to state lawmakers. And what typically happens in these, and you guys know this already, is that they'll meet 2 to 3 times, they'll solicit testimony from folks like yourselves, and then they'll put together a report that will oftentimes inform legislation that comes forward in the second year of the biennial. So very important that we pay close attention to the study committees. Anything I should add there?
Just one thing.
Yes.
While we're here in mid-June, January is going to be coming faster than you think. I don't believe we've heard from your legislative delegation on the deadline for you submitting requests for local legislation, but usually I think it's in the fall.
That's right.
So we'd encourage you to, again, please reach out to us. Let us know what your needs are, what your departments are asking for, what you need, especially if it's a local legislation, because we'd like to put that together, maybe even help you put together a legislative delegation meeting in the fall so you can present to them your wish list for the 2024 session. So it seems like we have a lot of time, but time seems to tick away pretty quickly. So we'd love to participate in that process.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Franklin?
First, I want to say thank you all for your presentation, and thank you for your hard work, for standing in the gap for us. Not just at the Capitol, but I run into you quite often having those conversations, even off the beaten path and representing Clayton County well, and it really makes a difference. The first thing, though, a sidebar, Chief, there was a question, as something you talked about, lost fees. I want to talk to you offline about if we are making sure that we negotiated those lost fees for animal control. If you can, I just don't want to forget that, if you don't mind. So I'm glad y'all reminded me of that. But then also the other thing is I would like to do a deeper dive, not now, but later, into the local option sales tax. And I know the new law was passed with HB 431, but I do believe there's opportunities that maybe we have not explored as a board, that in other more rural counties that they've had to be more creative within the confinements of the regulations. So I'd like to have an offline conversation about that as well, if we can, to ensure that Clayton County is using it to the best optimization possible. And then I think that's about it.
Other questions?
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Hambrick?
Yes, actually, this is probably just something I would like to see you all do. You mentioned something about the tourism. I'm not sure if that was a House bill or if it was a Senate bill regarding tourism. Okay.
It was a study committee that resulted in a bill that would allow you to change your nonprofit that's currently designated to handle all your tourism. Groups coming in, incentives and such. And so with all of that going across the state, I think it was probably a statewide look in a study committee that did result in a bill.
I know you're mentioning it to us, but I would like for you all to reach out to possibly our tourism office to let them know, so they can be, if they don't know already, that they can read that bill and find out what, applies to them. Same thing with the Economic Development Office. You all mentioned something about something's going on this week and all. I don't know if our office, Economic Development Office, is aware of that. Right. See, if you all could let us know, let our different departments know, when you all find these things out.
Thank you, Commissioner. And tomorrow's event is just a hearing, but that's a really good point. And I believe that COO Dietrich Sanford actually invited us. I think we had a standing meeting at one point throughout this relationship on, I think it was a monthly event on Fridays where we'd actually get to sit with department and agency leads to hear exactly what was going on. So I think we probably just need to restart those, because it gave us a really great in-depth look at what you guys are already dealing with and where we might see linkages with legislation that's put forward. So thank you for that suggestion.
And all these hearings are online, and you can view them after the fact. So we'll make sure you get all the appropriate links.
Absolutely.
Great. And Senate Bill 129 regarding days off for voting. Now, I remember years ago, they only acknowledged the presidential general election. So now, does this bill include all elections?
Yes, in fact, it includes municipal elections, primary runoffs. Everything is included in this bill. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, again, thank y'all for the presentation and all the work that you're doing on behalf of Clayton County. We do appreciate everything you do. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you.
Great evening, brother. Next up is electric vehicle stations. George Gamble.
And let me say this, I'm not sure if this is a typo or not, but I did request something on electrical vehicles, but this is not the one that I was talking about. This is something different. I think someone else requested this company.
Got it.
Mr. Gamble?
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and board members, for extending the invitation to talk to you about something very dear to my heart, and that's clean energy sustainability. Again, my name is George Gamble. I'm the CEO of Powerhouse Energy 360. We are a full-service engineer, design, and build solar battery storage, and EV infrastructure installation, and we're based here in Atlanta, Georgia. And what I want to briefly talk about today is why a clean energy sustainability program so crucial and so important, to a county, as it will really impact your economic growth as well as your community health. Number one, first thing I hear when we talk about clean energy and solar and EV, people seem to think that we're in competition with utility companies, but that's really so much not true. And actually, utility companies like Georgia Power really enjoy a lot of these clean energy initiatives that are going on, because what it does, it reduces their production of electricity, which reduce their costs and make them more profitable. Also, too, with low to moderate income housing issues and projects that you may have going on, we can introduce community solar projects that would lower the cost of utilities for those residents, thus giving them more money for more crucial things like medicine, food, and just other essentials that they would need. So this is really, really an opportunity. Also, too, with counties, and I've talked to several counties and several municipalities and clean energy symposiums, but the counties that really want to attract new people, residents, some of the best, it's crucial that you create a clean energy transportation as well as an EV plan, because the new EV consumer is kind of sort of like your cell phone. If you see a U.S. port, you're going to plug your phone up whether you have 50% charge or 80% charge, because it's a habit. You're going to do it. That's the same way the EV drivers are going to think. They're going to plan their day, where they want to play, where they want to eat, where they want to work, by do you have accessibility to EV stations. That's how they're going to plan their weeks, their days, and their whole thinking. So, and the most important piece to it, as you expand on clean energy initiatives in your county, you're also going to need, what's crucial is labor. It's going to increase jobs. It's going to increase skill sets, because the biggest challenge for the clean energy and infrastructure that's going into this country is we do not have enough labor. And I really want to address that with your tech schools, to let them know, if a student doesn't have an idea what to do, tell them to get into electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or electrical contracting, because there will be a huge shortage of these people in the labor force. Now, very quickly, I promise to be brief. One thing I would like for the board to really consider is EV installation infrastructure at your government buildings, at your parks, community centers, libraries, and recreational facilities, and any county-owned properties that you don't maybe not have a particular need for, that's at least a mile away from 285 or from 75, because there's Department of Energy funding to fund these projects for you, and as well as these EV stations can be a revenue generator for the county as well. As I mentioned before, housing authorities, I'm working with Georgia Power on a community solar program, and I would love the opportunity to talk to whomever you wish that I could talk to about adopting a community solar program. Energy battery storage is really key, and I see some officers here, because sustainability and resiliency is capital. When it's not a matter of if the power is going to go down one day, it's just really a matter of when it's going to go down and how long it's going to go down. By having a solar battery storage system on an emergency center, a fire station, a police station, the lights will stay on, the facility will be active in the event of a bad weather condition or power outages, tornadoes, or whatever. We also received a grant from Department of Energy to develop mobile generators. As we know, and I'm sure a lot of people can attest to, gas generators just are not reliable. We've seen that issue with sewer water treatment plants in Houston, where they had a bad winter storm, the generators didn't work, contaminated water got in the system, people lost their lives. So that's another reason why clean energy is really, really the way to go. One thing, too, that we offer is a consulting service. Some counties, some cities have sustainability managers really tune in to all the opportunities, incentives, rebates on a federal, state, and local level. We offer those services, too, for our clients. We know all the rebates throughout the country on a federal, state, local, city level. We can identify those opportunities. We have software that can identify the best EV stations, locations for EV stations. And also, too, we can create goals for you. If you want to be 50% carbon-free by X amount of years or 100% carbon-free by X amount of years, we can collaborate with you to establish those goals and how to really reach them. And also, too, very important that we work with the utilities that are in our areas, whether or not that's Georgia Power or Greystone. We do have a very good relationship with those utilities. We are an authorized contractor for Georgia Power. So we have a very good relationship. So I'm going to end with that. I promise to be brief. The day is going long. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Are there any questions for Mr. Campbell? All right. Well, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. And do have a good evening.
But thank you very much, sir.
Right.
Thank you.
Next up is a public hearing for the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget. Ms. Jackson.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. We're going to start with the budget process. Budget requests were sent to departments on December 8th. Budget requests were due back on January 13th. Meetings were held with the departments May 2nd through the 11th. The budget hearing is, of course, tonight, June 6th, and budget adoption is scheduled for June 20th and has been advertised in the Clayton News Daily as required by state law. Ooh. Okay. Analyzing the request came in at $295.5 million, including additional personnel, which could be reclassifications or new personnel, totaling $8.3 million. Our revenue estimate for this year was $292 million, which is automatically a variance of $3 million. Additional requests / priorities that came in during this budget year: the hospital at a request of $7 million, the pension change at a request of $6.3 million, and that's the employer side increasing from 13.9 to 21.5. A COLA, 3% COLA for employees totaling $5 million, a merit increase totaling $5.2 million, with total additional requests totaling $23.5 million, for a total variance to the estimated revenue of $26.5 million. 64% of the general fund revenue estimate are property taxes. Property taxes are derived from the Tax Digest, which is an official listing of all property owners, the assessed value of the property they own, and the taxes levied on their property. The Tax Digest has property at 40% of the fair market value, less exemptions, and you apply the millage rate. The rollback rate, as required by the state, is the rate that will produce the same revenue on the current digest that last year's rate would have produced had no reassessments occurred. There are two components of the Tax Digest: reassessments and growth. Reassessments is just when your property has been revalued. Growth is when new businesses or new residential homes come into place. We had a large number of reassessments this year. When the millage rate is greater than the rollback rate, it equals a tax increase. In this budget, the chairman did not want to ask the citizens for a tax increase at this time, so he's proposing to roll back the millage rate from 18.197 mills to 16 mills. If there are any changes to the proposed budget via an amendment to this budget book on the 20th, it will require either a millage increase to reallocate items currently in the proposed budget or the use of fund balance for one-time, non-recurring expenditures. The general fund expenses. Currently, 63% is made up of personnel, 34% regular operating accounts, 2% capital. However, capital is primarily funded through SPLOST accounts, which is why that number is so low in our current proposed budget. Currently, the general fund budget is $292.6 million, which is a 4% increase over the 2023 amended budget. Within this budget, you have 21 new positions, to include 1 for Clerk of Superior Magistrate Court, 5 for the District Attorney's Office, 2 for the Solicitor's Office, which are positions that were grant funded and needed to come over to the general fund, as that grant will no longer cover the cost of those positions. The Elections Division, 1 position, Finance, 1, the Police, 1, the Animal Control Rescue Coordinator discussed earlier. The Office of Resiliency and Sustainability, 2 positions, Senior Services, 3, the Sheriff's Office, 5, and the Emergency 911 Fund, 1. The cost of the 21 positions to the general fund is $961,635. The cost of the Emergency 911 Fund is $112,422. Also within this budget, we have reclassifications of 60, totaling $258,238. With reclassifications, a department may ask to simply increase the cost of a position type, or they may also ask to delete certain positions that they are no longer needed in their division. And this is a list of all the positions that were reclassed in this current proposed budget. And I won't go over all of them, as it's so many to go over, but there are 60. For the Emergency 911 Fund, there is 1 that's asked to be reclassed. The capital, once again, is funded primarily through SPLOST and our life-to-date funds, and are amended in after the new year rolls over. And we also have funds from 3 different SPLOST in this budget. It'll be the 2004, 09, and 2015, where projects are scheduled for completion in this current proposed budget. Chairman, this concludes the presentation, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Jackson. This is a public hearing, so before I get to public comments, are there any questions for Ms. Jackson from board members?
Yes, there is, Mr. Chair.
Franklin.
It's okay. Thank you for your presentation. And first I want to ask you, let's go back to the percentage of property taxes. Do you actually have that broken down by commercial versus residential?
It is on the digest. When we get the digest, it shows the difference in real and personal as well as commercial. Yes, ma'am.
Can you bring that back to us for presentation? Let me tell you why, because I've been focusing on this since I've been on the board. One of the things that I realized is that we can no longer run our county off the backs of its personal homeowners. That is very tough. And that's another reason why I was asking about like community development and their hours, because we're hearing from business owners that are wanting to do business in Clayton County that unfortunately they're not able to get a hold of us, and that our hours were different from others, or again, not getting return phone calls back. So we got to work through that on the operations side. Hopefully they'll figure that out. But in the meantime, I do want to see over a period of time of our commercial growth within the community, and that may need to also come from the tax commissioner as well. Okay, so thank you for that one. The other question I have is dealing with the use of all of the budget. How much of the budget, how much of the funds included in the budget was utilized from either ARPA or CARES Act funding? Because you talked about the temporary positions, and I know some of those were funded with additional funds. Do we have that information?
I don't have that for you tonight. I can bring that back tonight. ARPA funds, as well as all of the grant funds, as indicated in the budget book, they're amended in during the course of the year and rolled over at that time, so they're not actually budgeted. They're life-to-date funds is what we call them, but I will bring those back.
Okay, please, we need to still do a deeper dive because we need to prepare as we move forward, because as you know, those funds have to be spent down by 2026. They have to be allocated by 2024, but spent down by 2026. And if there's some CARES Act funding that we can still move around to help with the dogs, as you saw that it increased when everybody went back to work, then we need to see about utilizing those funds for that purpose.
Commissioner Franklin.
Yes,
Hold on.
sir.
I just want to ask one simple question.
Go ahead.
What was you refer to them now as what type of funds? Those ARPA funds she was speaking about?
It's how we budget them. How we budget them is called life-to-date.
Life-to-date.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I was looking
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So that means it shows us how we're using the funds right now, but at the same token, we know they're running out.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's still important to know. And then the other thing, other point that I want to just put on for, again, a deeper dive is on the reclassifications of positions. Because I have to say that Commissioner Hambrick Commissioner Hambrick's brought up a good point on this matter, though. We do want to make sure that reclassifications are captured and that we're not going to have to go forward and do it again in the next 3 to 4 months. Now, I do believe, as we just heard earlier, we're behind on some of our services that we provide. Like, for instance, 911, PD, fire is kind of, they're okay, but they need to go they need more positions, but even the sheriff's office. So with the increased load of service they're providing, I do want to do a deeper dive to ensure that we're on track to give you the support that we need and we're not just always lagging and having to play catch up. So that's another deeper dive that I would like to do with you, to do some comparisons prior to the adoption of the budget. Does that make sense, staff? Great. And then one final piece, I still want to look at what we're spending either out of the general fund or on the fund balance to fix the issues with these new buildings. I just left one of our new buildings. We're still working through these issues. It's very important for us to take a look at and evaluate what those dollar amounts are that we're spending to fix issues that we've already allocated funds from the SPLOST fund. Because then what we're doing is having to go back in and pay it twice. Like we just had to pay for a fence, pay for other things. Those are things that we need to take note of now, particularly as we get ready to build the new buildings, such as the new county administrative building. So the community needs to have a real good understanding of how, if you don't do the job right the first time, it costs you more money on the back end. So we do want to keep up with that as well. And that's all I have on that for now.
Any other
Thank you.
Commissioner Hambrick.
Yes. I'm just looking at the, these current salaries and the new salaries. And I see a couple of them were a minus.
That's where the positions may have been deleted, like for emergency 911, for example, they added a director as well as a digital records custodian, but they deleted 3 call takers. So various departments, if they have a position that's been vacant for a while, or they've restructured their department and decided that they no longer need that position, they may delete that position, which may result in a cost savings.
Okay, a couple. Okay, well, and I'm really looking at this because I definitely do not want us to go into our, either the general fund or the fund balance.
Right.
And all.
Positions,
And
right.
I do like the recommendation that was made by the chairman about rollback.
The millage rate.
And
Definitely.
yes, I do, because I do not want a tax increase.
No.
And I've gotten so many calls and people mentioning that, and that it was like an automatic thing after they got the, the tax, well, it wasn't the tax bills, it was the information from the tax assessor's office and all. But I also see some substantial increases. I don't know, when do we address that? do we get to address that with, the board or with finance or what?
Once the public hearing is over, of course, you guys can discuss amongst yourselves, or if there's an amendment to the budget book, if you will reach out to me and we can draft an amendment to change or alter the book or amend the document any way that you like,
Okay. 'Cause
so that
I-
it can be
again-
prepared before the adoption day.
Okay, because again, I'm a stickler for the fund balance and the general fund. I just, you know, well, I guess I've said that enough this year with the board on that, so, yeah, so I'm really looking at this and, we'll have some questions. And how did we arrive at some of these? Okay, that's
Commissioner
it for
Davis?
me.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Have we had any discussions with the school board on possible rollbacks as well?
No.
Because
we
they are,
haven't.
I believe, at the maxed out.
They're
They
maxed
are,
out at
but that's
28
not our
mils.
place.
Yes, I'm just,
That's not our authority.
I understand.
Let's stay over here.
He still has the right to ask, but go ahead and proceed on.
Address
We just gonna
how
focus on
folks'
us.
money is coming into the county.
You could do that as a citizen, sir.
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
yes, yes, because I look at my tax bill and know. But, and also too, what I want to know is, anytime there's a rollback, even if it's at an equal level, does that have to be advertised as a tax increase?
No,
Not-
if the
not anymore.
rollback rate is lower
It's
than
a
the
tax
millage rate, it does not have to be advertised as a tax
That was
increase.
just changed then by state, I believe, because before it was, had to be advertised even as a tax increase, I thought.
So would it be a tax decrease?
No, even though it's not a tax increase,
Okay.
it's how it had to be advertised.
Okay.
And the other part is, I think we have to be cognizant of one thing. Yes, we don't want our taxes to go up. Nobody does. But we have to be cognizant that our departments, every department, needs to begin to get salaries commensurate with the Metro Atlanta area. And so we've got to find a delicate balance of how do we begin to bring in revenue to begin to afford these tax, or not these tax, but these salary increases, even with the COLA, and also begin to feed our general fund.
Mr. Chair,
Hold on,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Who-
no,
who is
I
that?
want to say something with
Go ahead.
him. Not,
Go ahead.
you ever watch Good Times?
I've seen it.
You know that one session when they went in there and they were trying to figure out them bills? And you're, look at them, I got them smiling. Don't smile too hard now.
I'm telling you.
So then they go, well, we're going to put it on this bill, that bill, and they always missing a bill. You know what? That's what those impact fees are for, sir.
That's
Because
part of it.
then, I want you to remember that as an I'm just saying as an explanation because you know it's just like Good Times.
No, understand.
Because when you have a huge pot of money in a limited pot with a definitive amount, the more that we can take off the general fund, as Commissioner Hambrick just said, and then we can lighten the load, the better off we are. Because think about it. Even though our population has not increased as much, we just heard we got more dogs coming into the county. I looked at even the services of the organization that's unfortunately defunct now, where I looked at the numbers and we were servicing more kids from Gwinnett, from other counties. We service so many people. Our service is so high. So, but yet and still, again, the taxpayers, the property owners are having to bear that responsibility. 911, we provide 911 to how many cities now, Chief? 6 out of the 7 cities. So we got to think about those things. So you're on point. But in order for the general fund to hold the balance of the salaries, we got to lighten their load for some of those other things. So let's have that
Yeah,
conversation.
And I agree with you. And sometimes that's called getting a second job with those impact fees. And I think we have to begin to
We do.
look at that as supporting our efforts. But we've got to get our departments on all levels whole. And right now, they're not whole from a salary perspective.
I agree. This is
And we've
always
got to
moving.
begin to move forward. So I would think, I'm just saying, I believe we want to be very intentional in how much we roll back and how do we begin to deliver these salaries.
The other point I want to make, if I, for this sake of conversation, one of the things that I enjoy doing is connecting with other jurisdictions that do not have a vast amount of resources. Like We do. We're always comparing ourselves to the metro Atlanta area because we take on a lot of the issues. But in a lot of these rural areas, they don't have a lot of this flexibility that we have. And so when I look at what they're doing, we can probably adopt at least one or two of those things that they're doing to do just what you said, Commissioner, to be able to address those very issues. And what do I mean by that? Additional funding sources such as the grants management. That's why that piece is so key. And then we can begin, as I said before, do some of these real life impactful projects that will allow us to be able to take that pressure off of our general fund. So I'd love to do a round table. In fact, I gave you a call the other day. That's what I was calling you about. Might want to call me back. Let's go. Let's work on it.
Yeah, I think we need to.
Let's work on it.
And we can do it in a
Commissioner
retreat.
Davis.
That'll be real good.
Commissioner Davis.
I have one more question, and it's kind of not directed at you, but kind of some department heads. As to how they came up with their budgets, or from the salary perspective. Was it geared off of optimal salary, or was it geared off of current salary? And I know I see DA back there and a couple of others. And can we hear from them briefly of how
Well, I'm sorry
Go
to
ahead,
cut you
I'm sorry,
off.
go ahead.
But yes, that's an excellent question, simply because when we sat down with the department heads and those elected officials who wanted to speak, they spoke and articulated a position from having competitive salaries with those other counties that's around us and similarly situated to Clayton County. So those wages were set, they brought before us to recommend though at that point, because some of them are not at the top. I would say all of them. None of them were at the top, correct?
Right.
At maxed out.
Right.
So they did that because they are losing personnel, and they want to, especially Madam DA in the back talking about prosecutors going. That's the issue. So there's some other department heads who spoke on the same, within the same vein, and that's where those numbers were derived from in terms of the reclasses.
And one more thing, Mr. Chair, that's important to piggyback on what you said. Remember, our call volume is higher than those other areas that pay more. I worked in a county south of us, and the salaries were amazing. But at the same token, their call volume is much less than what we're taking. And that's that presentation that both our chief of fire presented, chief of police presented, as well as Sheriff Allen, and previously our new DCOO presented. We got to keep that in mind, is that our folks are working harder.
And I agree with that. They are the ones who brought us to scale. So I would think that they contemplated that as well, or at least I hope they did. Commissioner Anderson, did you have anything?
No, I just said, excellent job on the presentation. And again, as I talked to some of our department heads, that was the main thing that they talked about. They looked at how other jurisdictions were being paid as far as in their departments. And also, a lot of them looked at cost savings that it took to take away some of the jobs and then add some of the jobs. So again, thank you for what you've done. And I also love this, the tax, I say decrease of to 16 meals. That is going to make a difference. And I wanted to ask this question. So as we roll back our millage rate, will that help as far as our property taxes for next year as well? Will that help? Will we see a decrease in those, do you think? Or
In your property values or your property
Property
taxes?
values, so, yeah.
That's a whole
That's
nother year and a whole nother assessment.
Yeah, I'm just
Right.
thinking ahead of time.
Right. The assessors will make that decision once they go out, because our assessors actually reassess property values every year. They're only required to do it every 3 years by state law, but most metro areas do it every year, and they do as well. So I'm not sure what the values will look like next year.
One more quick one. Chief, did y'all ever get your answer about the relocation benefit? Because I think we thought it was being paid and it wasn't.
Yes, that's been addressed.
Okay, good.
Yes,
Commissioner
it
Hamilton.
is in this budget.
Yes. On the sheet, the proposed budget general fund expenses,
Yes, ma'am.
reclassification 60. So what is that 258,000
That's the cost of all of the reclassifications that are within this budget.
on a one-time basis or
well, it'll be ongoing. You will pay their salaries from now on, but this particular cost is for this year, because in this year with the reclassification, some positions were deleted. Well, next year when we prepare the budget, it will just be the ongoing positions. We won't have those positions to delete.
Okay, and more importantly, when I'm looking at the quantity,
Yes, ma'am.
does that mean that's one employee, 2 employees? I see a lot of ones.
Right, for the reclassification, they're reclassing that one employee. In some cases, you see 2. Some may even just be a title change. With police, for example, they did a title change on their crime scene investigators to police detectives, and that's 11, but there's no cost associated with that.
Right, that was gonna be a question too, on that, which is, that's a good thing. But, right, but I was really concerned with that quantity number.
Yes,
So I definitely have some questions at some point regarding that.
And Ms. Jackson will be scheduling, and if you would like, individual meetings with you to discuss your concerns or any other amendments you might want her to add. So at this time, this is a public hearing on the proposed.
Wait, Mr. Chairman, one more.
Okay.
One quick one, because I know we got a
Commissioner
fast
Franklin.
voting period. Can you break down the salaries, not necessarily all of them, but in a bulk of the benefits versus the actual salary, the cost of benefits? Because we usually have the cost of benefit amount versus the entire,
Correct, and I do have that breakdown, like if we meet for each department, I have that breakdown. And it varies on workers'
Right.
comp, it depends on which department, and, because some of them are a little more at risk than others. But the group health is like 6,200. Pension, of course, now will be based on, depending on how the board votes on the 20th, will be based on an increase of 21.9. Currently, it's still in the budget at 13.9, with the anticipated increase going to the 21.5, I'm sorry.
Got it.
For the employer side.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now, public hearing. Anyone like to speak in reference to the proposed budget? I get you second. Madam DA stood up first, so Ms. Mosley.
Oh, see, I was looking.
Yeah, this morning was not a good morning, this triple knee pop. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Board. One, thank you. Commissioner Hambrick, last year you asked me to come and explain about our victim advocates. The 5 positions that you see are the victim advocates. Basically, CJCC, the federal government just killed VOCA, slashed it, told the states, figure it out. States told the counties, figure it out. That was the figure out. Basically, if I remember correctly, we are funded through till September by grants. Then the county will pick up October and run the rest of the year. So we got 1 state position. The government did do that. The state did. So every judicial circuit got 1 victim advocate that state funded. They have told me that we will have 2 that will now be grant funded. So with this, all of my victim advocates will be able to keep a job. We will be in compliance with the Georgia Constitution. But I ask for about $1 million in my budget. And the reason for that is just to keep my people. Last week, we offered a young lady a job, and great prosecutor. She says, I cannot take a $20,000 to $25,000 pay cut. 2 weeks before that, we offered a job. The same response. I am right now, I actually drove up from Macon. I'm down there teaching basic litigation. Actually, I'm running basic litigation. I am over it now. My colleagues from throughout the state are there, elected. I was speaking to the chair, or not the chair, but the DA of the Okmulgee Judicial Circuit, which is an 8-county circuit. He has in his county, Hancock County, which is the poorest county in the state of Georgia. Do you know what they pay their assistant district attorneys? $60,400. The significance of that is he has a population of 175,000 people. out of the 8 circuits. We're almost 400,000. You're paying my ADAs, what, 64 and some change? We're making 66, I'm sorry, thank you. 66 and some change. 6,000 more than a circuit that has 8, and it has about 300,000 fewer people. I talked to the Houston County DA. They're making 80 something. I'm not even gonna lie. I looked at him, I said, hey man, what's the biggest city in your circuit? What is in Houston County besides Buc-ee's? You know, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but I don't know. He said Warner Robins. They're making 80 something thousand. The DA, Macon Bibb. Miss Howard, I said, Anita, what are you paying? Over 80 something thousand dollars the starting salary for the ADAs. Henry County, Mr. Patillo is down there. Darius, where are you guys sitting? He said, Tasha, we're in the mid-70s, but I'm asking for more. Yeah. Fulton, they're starting 84. DeKalb, right around there, 85. Cobb has gone back. They're about to hit 90. Gwinnett is somewhere in the 90s. I'm getting killed. I'm getting slaughtered. My ask is minimum. My guys bust their behinds. They do an excellent job. We had 3 murder convictions last week. That doesn't include the pleas. We never talk about the pleas because they come in and they plea out to life without the possibility of parole, life with the possibility of parole. My juvenile division is doing an excellent job. I need help. I have had 4 positions open for well over a year, 88 positions. My guys deserve it. This is not me just trying to throw money. They have earned this. They have earned the help. And that's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking, is to be able to compensate my ADAs close to what everybody else is getting. I'm not coming in here asking for 90,000. I think, Chairman, what did I tell you and Ms. Jackson? If you just get me to the front row, maybe even the second row of the ring, of the fight ring, I think I was asking that my starting goes up to 75, 76. Give me a little leeway. That's all I'm asking. Whenever you do the rehearings or whatever, that's all I'm asking. To give my people a living wage, you know, and give me something where I have something that I can sit there and give them. Because honestly, people come to me saying, we want to work for you, but we can't at the starting salary. I don't have a problem with people getting bites on my applications. I get bites all the time, but it's my starting salary.
So let me add, wait,
Were you finished?
I'm finished.
Excuse me.
my brain's working. So are you saying that your ask is not included in this budget, or it is included in this budget? I'm a little lost.
It's not included, if I remember correctly. When I submitted my budget, I did my ask at that point in time.
So what is the difference between the ask and what is in the budget?
She requested it. It was not a part of the chairman's approved budget. We went through the budget.
I think it goes back to what, again, Commissioner Davis was saying, and this is why, and even though the DA is quote unquote not necessarily a constitutional officer, this is why we're going to start with number 1. Constitutional officers should bring their budget directly to the board because we have a constitutional responsibility to the state. But we too have a constitutional responsibility to the district attorney's office as well because as it states, they work specifically on behalf of the state. So as a board of commissioners, it's difficult for us to analyze information. And I know what our process is. I know how it's listed, but it don't mean that it is serving us now. And what is not serving us now is to hear what we just heard and not understand, well, what was the original ask before it was presented to the board. So it's almost like we're giving something and just, okay, well, I need y'all to vote. But we don't know what we're looking at. We don't know what we're comparing it to. We don't know what the gaps are. And I do admit that that's unfair. So I need to see what the ask was. I think moving forward, we can present the chairman's budget, however y'all want to put it, balanced budget, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But in all fairness, I think that this board needs to receive exactly what's being presented and ask for it with their reasons of why they're asking for it. Because otherwise, what we are is a body, and we got one person making a decision prior to it coming to the body. And that's a concern, because then are we hitting the marks to make sure that we can serve the community well? So thank you for your presentation, and hopefully we can get that information of the difference.
And I just want to let you know that $1 million would not cause a compression issue, because I addressed that in that $1 million, just basically about $1 million that I was asking for. So to bring in those salaries, it would cause everybody else to be bumped up, so we wouldn't have that compression problem. So.
Are you on the same scale as the Solicitor General?
I think.
Because I think he's asking for the same.
I think so. I'm honestly, I have not looked at that since I left the SG's office. I've been completely focused on us and trying to get people in. We made an offer to a gentleman today, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that he accepts. If not, we will go back to the drawing board. I mean, honestly, those vacancies have caused me to restructure my office. And yeah, we need people, qualified people, to come in and help, because crime has not stopped.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Franklin.
Madam DA, I
Yes.
do want to get that information, as we stated, in all fairness to you and your people. But when you come before this board, I do have to be honest with you. I do benefits in all them counties you just named. There are other aspects in those counties that we don't take into account as a
Right.
board. I can guarantee you their pension fund is not like ours. There's several things that are not like ours. And I do agree that the cost of living is a lot lower, and they're buying land there. Just left Twiggs, just left, and not only Warner Robins, but I'm headed on the way back down to Sumter, so people are moving down there. The only thing that I would say with your presentation, where it was very passionate, is if you're going to give us factors, give us all the factors. At least
Right.
the board needs to consider all the living factors, because we're not comparing apples to oranges.
Right.
And there's a reason that you get most of your elected officials on the state level from those counties you're talking about. So there are some aspects that we do provide that do provide better benefit, but I do say we need to have the whole story for a full evaluation. So as a body, we can look at it and make a decision of what we can and cannot do to truly serve this county in a fashion that is not only quality, but to keep us safe. Because I do know that this is part of our safety, what we got to do for the community. Because you can lock them up all doggone day long. And like I said earlier, I know that was inappropriate, don't put that on the news, but you can lock folks up all day long. And that's why I have no, how do you say it? I'm not biased of who comes before this board, because we got to look at the process. You got PD locking folks up. You got the sheriff's office locking folks up. People want to talk about the jail, but yet and still, if you don't have the prosecutors, whether it's on the DA side, the solicitor side, to be able to prosecute these people and get them out of that system, we're doing ourselves a disservice, a true disservice.
Any other questions? Because colleagues keep texting me, so I've got to get back
Well,
south.
I do appreciate Commissioner Franklin bringing that up, because that's part of this process, is for me to set a budget, and then we have this discussion through this budgetary hearing, and then we go back, circle back around, and then we come back and we make amendments or not, and then we vote on it. So there is a process to everything.
Understood.
But thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Mr. Andrews.
Drive safe.
Good evening. Drew Andrews, unincorporated Clayton County, District 4. Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chair, and Board.
Happy belated birthday, too.
Oh, thank you, Gemini. I had an opportunity to briefly look over the budget, proposed budget, but to my dismay, I didn't see anything about addressing the homelessness issue. Maybe I overlooked it.
Same here.
But we have, elected officials, have a social responsibility. As a compassionate society, we have a moral obligation to take care of those most vulnerable in our community. Our school system gets it. They have a whole department dedicated to our children, which happen to be about 2,100 students in our community who are experiencing homelessness. So if our students are experiencing homelessness, so are their parents. I am happy because I'm a dog owner. I'm happy, grateful that we have a whole department funded to take care of our displaced pets, but we don't have one single dollar to help our unsheltered neighbors and their children? I'm hurt. I'm disgusted. We must do better. These are our neighbors that we see. I know we see them. We walk past them. There are in condemned buildings. I was out of the country and I watched our board give $3.8 million to our sheriff department to help clear the backlogs of evictions. And there's a backlog and they need to be addressed. But there was no consideration about if we evict these people, where are they gonna go? I'm disgusted. And I just humbly ask that you show some compassion to give, I don't know, can we create like a homeless coordinator or something? You know, to get our neighbors who are struggling, because we are a community of struggling people in Clayton County. We love one another. We just need to show more compassion for those who are underserved. Thank you for your time.
Let me just say this, Mr. Andrews, and your point is well taken, and could we always be doing more? Absolutely. But at the same time, we do fund initiatives that help the homeless, such as Calvary Refuge, Hope Shelter, Hearts to Nourish, and some of the others that we provide grant money to address some of the homeless problems. Now, can we do more? I agree with you on that. So I just want to point out that although you peruse the budget book, there is money in there for the homeless. And I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, can we highlight that? Because I totally missed it. If there's some funding, and I do know that Calvary Refuge, Calvary Refuge and Hearts to Nourish, I do know that they are doing an incredible job.
Right.
But
We can
they're
do more.
overwhelmed. They overwhelmed.
I got you.
Thank you.
And can I say something?
ahead.
Also, I have a program that I've been working with, and I'll share it with you today when we get through. But it's to help our homeless population. And this program also serves Henry, Clayton, Butts County, Fayette, Spalding, Jasper, and Lamar County. So I will give you, I will share this with you. So when you encounter anyone that's homeless or may need services, this program will help you as well. Will help them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Judge Ferguson.
Good afternoon. It's been a long day for all of us, Chairman and the board. Thank you for letting me come before you. I want to make it clear that I'm not asking for an increase in what's been proposed. What I'm trying to do is make sure that I know there's going to be some adjustments, that probate court is not one of those adjustments. So I'm just asking for you to approve what's in there. I know that that's with some add and deletes. I want to clarify some things, and of course, my budget compared to some of these other departments is quite small. So I don't know that even if you cut what was added to my budget, if it would even make a difference. So just please don't cut it. But I would like to state one thing that's important for us to understand as counties and comparing us to other counties. So if you compared me to, let's say Chatham County, because I think population-wise we're similar in population. What I do in my court is not the same as what they do in their court. We are a county where 90% of the litigants that come before me don't have an attorney. Mm-hmm. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what's happening. We have a lot of forms. As you know, I was the forms chair for 9 years. So those forms kind of lay out what happens in an estate. But when the person comes to the window and says, I want to file this petition, who is the petitioner, it's going to go downhill from there. So what my clerks deal with day in and day out is just a lot different. And I was able to get an attorney. As y'all know, I have the pro bono projects that's currently being funded through the ARPA funds. And so that helps a lot. But that attorney spends a couple of times a month trying to explain to people what their procedure is, what's going on. My clerks can't give legal advice, but they do their best. And they are worn out by the end of the day. My clerks are. So please don't cut anything that has already been put in the budget. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I want to get that elevator fixed over there and get that building fixed. I thank you for that.
Yeah, my law clerk was trapped in there 25 minutes. And that's a scary place to be.
And I'll wait till
But
Mr.
she
Chair
didn't quit,
acknowledges
so
me.
thank God.
No, I'll wait till he acknowledges me, because I
Commissioner
think he
Franklin.
wants to say something.
No.
I want to make sure it's in the budget that we fix that building. I'm so glad, and I'm so glad that you came on and stated what you stated, because if you all had not had that level of communication, I think it would have been assumed that everything was fixed. And we're constantly getting emails about folks getting trapped in the elevator. And between yourself, again, SO, who operates out of there, and even our tax commissioner, Danielle Smith, you all should not have to keep having to deal with that. So I hope it's in the budget to finally get that done so we can get in compliance.
But I am thankful that it doesn't leak after 12 years. So
Thank you,
we
ma'am.
finally got the leak fixed.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak?
Orlando Gooden, Clayton County, District 3. I'm listening to these presentations and they sound very impressive. I just have a couple of issues. One, I'm not very good at accounting, but if a department requests additional funding and we get it from the federal government, it's a one-time funding. It does not go into the regular budget, right? So, for example, if law enforcement asks for additional funding, that can be used for attracting other law enforcement officers, but is it in their regular salary? It can't be, because it's not ongoing. Okay. The issue that I have as a concerned citizen of Clayton County, I don't mind paying taxes. There's no phrase, if you have 50 cents, don't spend $1. What we have to be concerned with is waste, fraud, and abuse. It's not Clayton County only. The federal government is the biggest one. But you can't come and ask people for more money, and then where there's no oversight, accountability, or even an audit for the people to see, okay, this is where our money's going, and it's not being wasted. That's all.
Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? Okay, that concludes not public comment, but concludes the
hearing.
The public hearing. Is there any other remarks by the commissioners before we adjourn in reference to the budget?
Yeah, well, not the budget, sir, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Commissioner Franklin.
2 quick announcements. First of all, Juneteenth is coming up. We have a Juneteenth celebration on June 17th. And one of the things that we're addressing is mental health and health in our community. And of course, the disparaging, inequity among health within our community. We're also looking at the historical celebration of Juneteenth. And I'm excited to say that it features the amazing artwork of Dr. Yvette Crossing, a regular physical doctor, and Kaiser's going to be sponsoring this event. So I will invite the community to come out from 3 to 7 at the Flint River Community Center. One other thing with Juneteenth is real quick that MTS Foundation, who's been doing a great job in our community along with other ones. We want to recognize that we are a majority minority community, and we are all, many of us are affected by sickle cell one way or the other. And Juneteenth is Shine a Light on Sickle Cell Day. Think about those who, as we just put in the budget for hospital, to be able to help them out with funding, rather. We want to think about those that are having to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, but still have to live their lives. And finally, this is very, very important. Keep Elias Dennis in prayer, because our very own Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year, who is now the Georgia State Youth of the Year, he's heading out today to compete for the region, and we might have a national winner, y'all. So we got something to be excited about.
Chair.
Commissioner Davis.
Also, too, if we can keep our CFO, Ms. Stacy
Yes.
Merritt, in prayer,
I'm glad you said that.
as she lost her father, a
I
very
didn't know that
prominent
he
attorney
passed.
in
No.
Clayton County, Stephen Lister,
I didn't
who
know.
passed away yesterday. So please, please, let's keep her in prayer.
Yeah, thank you for reminding on that one. All right, so, Ms. Jackson, appreciate your hard work that you put into this budget, you and your staff, as well as Ms. Merritt. Done a tremendous job, and we look forward to coming up with a budget that we can adopt in the coming week or two. So with that being said, we stand adjourned. Thank you.